Hey, welcome everybody to the Monday Morning Call with Paul and my guest, Royce, aka Jesus, aka been there, done that, done it all, man. Super excited about having you on here. We've talked a little bit about different things over time, but I kind of want you to start out with telling that story you told me about how you won your election in college.
Oh, no, I lost it. I
Oh, you
lost the
lost? I thought
election.
you won it. Oh,
No,
okay.
I lost it. Good going, Paul. Now
E- e-
everyone is
Even better.
disappointed.
This is what we need on YouTube. How did you
No,
lose it, man?
in a way I won it though, because the whole campaign was don't vote for Royce.
Yeah.
And it worked. I lost, which was the win. I
Which
put
was
myself in a win-win position because I couldn't handle losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, basically I went to the University of Nevada in Reno, and my last semester, which is when the elections were, there was somebody running unopposed. So I decided, and he was like a big like student government guy. So I
Yeah.
just like threw my name in there as like
Yeah.
a joke. And I worked a bunch of artists, and I was like, let's just have like the stupidest, funniest campaign we can do. And the whole campaign was don't vote for Royce. And we actually set a student voter turnout record for the University of Nevada. The average is 12%, and we got 20% of the student body to vote.
Wow.
We like smashed it. And I did stop campaigning though at the end because people were really making a case that I should have been the
And they're gonna
president.
vote for you, right?
I had about 33% of the vote. I had about a third, a little bit more than that of the vote. And I was like, I gotta stop because I'm graduating. Like if I won, I would have graduated.
Oh yeah, so
And
you would have been termed out anyways because you're leaving.
yeah, but it wasn't against the rules. So that was,
Yeah.
it was just a funny, I mean, I could go on forever about that, but that was a fun time. I definitely felt like I was in a movie.
Well, look, man, you've done a lot of things before you kind of got into insurance, right?
Right.
What was sort of the attraction to this and what made you jump in? Who recruited you? How did it happen?
So the attraction, well, first off, just a little background. I have a degree in mining engineering. I used to work at a gold mine as an internship. And then I went into production, which I actually was doing film and television commercials. And after a while, I was really burnt out being on film and television sets. One of my last positions, I was just really burnt out.
Mhm.
And my mom actually had me get life insurance back when I was like 20 years old. So I've had life insurance for a while, which is not something it's super common amongst people.
Mhm.
And so I actually heard about the opportunity to get into life insurance, and I was like, you know what, this could be something that I actually not only I see as fiscally making sense, where I can make good money at it, but it's something I believe in.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even think about it being like a work from home situation. I didn't even know that it would be as flexible as it was. I just was like, I believe in life insurance. I think it's very important, and I can make more money than what I'm doing now, and also I could probably have a little bit more of a relaxed lifestyle, because on film sets I was working usually the minimum is 60 hours a week, not including lunch and traffic in LA. And
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, that's what brought me into this.
That's what's up, man. So we were kind of talking a little bit, and we were talking about how insurance is a very, mental game, right?
Mhm.
And there was something that you said, man, that like really resonated with me, and I wanted you to kind of, share it with the team, because I think it's really important for all of us to understand the ebbs and flows of this business. But you
Yeah.
said something about you knew it was real because of that.
Mhm.
Can you kind of chime in on what you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we've all been presented probably at some point in our lives an opportunity to make a lot of money.
Mhm.
And I've been presented opportunities to make a lot of money and in different industries. And I'm not going to knock that necessarily, but it never felt legitimate, or it never felt sincere or genuine.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true. And getting into insurance, when I first started getting into this, I heard about all the money people were making. And I was like, for me, naturally, I'm suspicious. I'm like,
Yeah.
Are people just trying to get me as a number maybe? And I started looking into it, and I was like, no, it's a real thing. The reason why these people make a lot of money though is not because they're getting lucky, but because they're working hard, and it does take hard work. Like it's simple. I don't remember who said it. It's simple, but it's still hard work.
Yeah.
And to me, that was validating. That was like, this is real. This is not just like some hurry up and sign up situation. This is like,
Yeah.
come have a career here. And if you work hard, you will reap the rewards.
Yeah. I think, you kind of touch on it, right? With insurance companies, there's a lot of selling the dream, and sometimes it's oversold that you're just going to come in and immediately start cashing out, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a real conversation that yes, you can make that money, but it's not necessarily instantaneous, right? First, you're learning how to run your own business, right? Which is a whole, skill set in itself. And then you're also learning how to sell. And if you've never sold before, even if you've sold other things but not life insurance, it's a different kind of sell per se than maybe selling a car or selling something else, right? So there's terminology, there's tone, everything that you're learning. And so it takes time, right? And so the good thing about it is, like here, we have so many people that can help you out, get you through that sale that normally if you're by yourself, you might not have gotten, right? Which is cool, I think. But, just touching on that, going back into the mindset of, the work and the hard work ethic that you put in, tell us kind of like what it was like in the beginning for you.
Yeah. And I think that part can't be overlooked enough when you said starting, like if you come to this as an employee and only ever having been a W-2 income worker, it is a different shift of mind that now you are your own boss. Like,
yeah,
I'm my own boss. My boss sometimes lets me sleep in, and that's not a good thing. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So that, and you're managing everything on the back end, and you're just kind of figuring it out. And it's exciting. And it's rewarding. And then the next thing is, you're learning sales. And that was the next thing you brought up. And it's like a lot of people can get scared of learning sales because, especially in our society and our culture, I believe, we have a lot of guilt-driven thoughts of like sales are these, evil people. But really, you start to overcome that pretty quickly when you realize that a lot of things you've bought have been bought from a salesman or somebody trying to sell you something.
Whether you knew it or not. Yeah.
And you're okay with it. You wanted the product. So
right.
That's okay. And then getting into sales. And the team is, if you come into this, you have to be coachable. I think even if you come from sales in a background, even if you come from maybe even a different insurance group, because there might be certain things that are a little different, but having the team here has been very helpful. And in the beginning, it was rough for me. I was nervous. I was like, can I do this? Because I didn't realize it and I didn't want it. I had like an employee mindset. I was like, can I do this? Can I be successful at it? And I remember one time I was laying in bed at night and I had already had this like idea of like, I could be successful. And then I was down because it happens. Yeah. No matter how far you are along in your career, you're going to get waves. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, should I just like try and be a doctor? Like, would that be easier? Because sales, it was tough for me. I was getting hit with some chargebacks at the time.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking of like all those tropey, like what I would consider corny stories of like a Steve Jobs success story or something. Right. And I was like, wow, it no longer became like a very typical or stereotypical of the business owner. It was like, this is my moment where I'm knocked down. This is my moment where how do I answer the call? And it happens. And I've realized that if you can get back up after getting knocked down, if you can take a few punches metaphorically to the face, then this is going to be very good for you because it does take some work and it takes some mental fortitude. And going into the ebbs and flows and knowing that when things are high, they're high. I mean, if you're a W-2 income earner, I don't know how many jobs where you can make $30,000 in 30 days, without having worked your way up the corporate ladder.
Let's talk about that, because you were talking about the beginning of the year, right? And you started out pretty good, then you had a low, and then you about 2 weeks in, was it in May? 2 weeks into May, and then the last 2 weeks of the first 2 weeks of June, right?
Yeah, last 2 weeks of May, last 2 weeks of June, I had the best 30 days I've probably ever had. And this was like, this was more money than I've like made in 30 days. I don't know. It was like, I think I did 30K, and that was incredible for me. And then something happened afterwards.
This is
This
the most
moment of
important
like,
part.
what?
I said this is the most important part. Yeah.
Yeah. After I did so well, a part of me all of a sudden experienced a sense of doubt that could ever really happen again. And I've recognized this about myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people have this. Maybe they recognize it or not. That I've kind of grown up thinking that there's like a ceiling as to my potential, and
Yeah.
I thought I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that again.
Right.
And I got into my head a lot, and I really got into my head, and I went on a downside. And a lot of it was self-inflicted, and I knew what was happening, and it was a battle between my conscious and my subconscious, of my subconscious having this doubt and my conscious saying, no, you're causing this doubt, let's get over this. And it was a real mental fight. And finally, after some time, I started to pick it back up again.
Yeah.
And it just takes work. It takes doing the tasks that you need to do, doing the activities, and we're all human. Like, laziness is I feel like a default for a lot of people, or getting distracted easily.
Definitely for me. Yeah.
I have tasks to do. All my dishes get clean.
Yeah.
And my room gets clean because it happens. It's part of it. But when I think what's important for me to know is realizing that even when you're doing Hall of Fame numbers or big numbers, you're still going to get waves. It's just a matter of understanding that when the highs get high, don't let it get to you. Try as hard as you can to not let it get to you. And same when the lows get low, because when the lows get low, it can feel like everything you've ever accomplished was just a fluke or impossible. And when the highs get high, you're like, how is nobody a millionaire yet? It's like, and it's trying to take the highs and the lows, that amplitude of what you're doing, and making it emotionally a little bit more level.
It's funny because you said a couple things that just kind of hit my head, right? And I've been doing this a while and helping coach people, and I've watched a lot of my agents where they would hit a really high, and then all of a sudden there's this free fall, right? And there's a couple of different things that could cause that. One is they take their foot off the gas, and they think, oh, I made a lot of money, I'm just going to relax. And then so it's like a free fall cliff, and then they spend the money too fast instead of putting some aside. And then they're in this panic mode. And then that panic mode actually makes it harder for them to sell in a lot of ways, because they're not relaxed anymore. They're kind of pressuring the client, you know what I mean? Because now they got to make it. And then the other reason is what you talked about, right? Self-help, right? Some people, when they're not used to being successful in something to that high of a degree, there's sort of a self-inflicted or self-destruction that they kind of go through, because they're not accepting of what they just did, and then also they don't really believe that they really did it. Maybe they just got lucky. Right. And so it's funny because you're bringing this up, and it reminded me of a conversation I had over the weekend. And somebody was telling me, hey, I've been really wanting this for a long time. I'm calling it into existence. They were talking about manifestation. I said, but are you really calling it into existence? Right. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, okay, well, what are you saying to yourself? They're saying, oh yeah, I'm always saying this and that. And I said, like, hey, I want this or I want that. Right. But what they ignored was the little voice in the back of their head that said, yeah, right. Like, you can't get that. Yeah, right. And they didn't realize that that's also calling out into the universe. And that one is actually more powerful because you're not putting that one into check. Right. And how important it is to put that little voice in check, because that little self-doubt voice in your head is what's going to keep you from being successful. Right. So I was telling that individual, talk back to it. Right. And they thought I was crazy, and they're laughing. Right. And I'm like, no, when they say, yeah, right, say, yeah, that's right, I'm going to do it. Right. Like, that's a huge pivotal thing, is mastering yourself. That's how you're going to go from, here to up here, I think. So it's crazy that you brought this up, right? Because you don't realize, you're calling out to the universe, you want this, but that self-doubt is calling out at the same time. So it's a conflicting message. So are you really going to get what you want?
It is. I would agree. I think it's important. It takes a lot of self-awareness, I think, to understand that that's happening. And some people will go into free fall and they don't know why. And it could be different for several reasons, but I think the main reasons are that voice that talks negative, the doubt, and also just not doing the work, recognizing why it's happening. And many times when it's that voice, it does sound crazy, but like you do have to talking back to it is a way of taking control and a way of kind of dictating your path and not letting that. And it's easier said than done, though, and that's
100%. Yeah.
So so I think for anybody watching this, everybody who watches this who's been in sales for a while probably knows what it's like to have a really big high and then to be followed by a low. And then the low isn't just not producing. The low is, like you said, they either spent the money or now they're in a low and they're getting chargebacks and they spent the money, and like the chargebacks happen at the worst time. And then now you're trying to sell and you're in panic mode and you sound needy and you're not doing good at giving like a good, like calm sales tone. And that is when it's so important to take that step back, if you can, out of what you're experiencing, out of your body, and just be like, this is what's happening. This is part of the process where there's this self-doubt. There is this sometimes this content of being like, I did really good, I can ease off the gas, and understanding I can't stop and I won't stop, and reconvincing yourself, no, I can do it because I just did it. And that wasn't luck, because I've done it. I did it, and I can keep doing it. I just have to keep doing it. And I think a lot of people underestimate, why, a lot of people underestimate the mental part of this. And going back to a little bit what I said before, when I first came here, I had like a guilt of making a lot of money, not like at the forefront, but I think in the back of my mind. Right. And I was like, why would a carrier want to give me like $1,200 right at the front? Like, why are carrier? And then they're insurance carriers. They've been around in this longer than I have. Right. And then now it makes sense. It's like, oh, I don't feel bad about this anymore, because I do realize how tough it is to do this with the mental game, and how so many people can, especially when they get that first hit, right? Like, it's like why we love Rocky. Rocky might not be like the toughest, the best fighter out there, but he's the toughest. He gets back up. It's every time. I love it because he gets knocked down, he gets back up. And when I was in that moment, and that day where I was about to go to bed, and I was like, this is my moment. It wasn't like spotlight shining on me. It was like, no, this is that moment where I have to make a decision of how I'm going to handle my own self-objections and how I'm going to move forward. And I mean, I'm patting myself on the back here, but I was really proud. Like I said, you know what? I'm going to make this work, because I know other people have in this group that I've talked to. Talked to. They're not just like people who have millions of followers on Instagram or anything. Right. I see. It's not like this facade. It's like, no, I'm talking to a guy right now who made more this weekend than I've made in probably 2 or 3 months of my life. I'm talking to him, and I have his help. I can always go to Paul and be like, Paul, I need some help. Like, this group is amazing. And so knowing that I have that, I say I have a group of support. I can go live. I can have people listen to me. And honestly, you can also share your mental well-being with other people, in terms of how, like, hey, I'm having a rough time right now, and I find it's really good. I have some people that I rely on in here, and that they rely on me when I'm doing good. I'm like, listen, I'm in the high of doing good. Let me pick you up. And then it helps pick them up. And then when they're in their high of doing good, I'm a little down, they're like, no, Royce, you got this. You're messing up here and here. And we're able to keep each other on point. And that's really important.
Let's do a little experiment here. Everybody who's here in the room right now, I'm sure you guys have gone through this, right? So throw 1 in the chat if you've gone through these ups and downs, right? Now, if you can, in the chat, put in there what you do or what you say to yourself to overcome that challenge. I think, and then Royce, after we see some of these answers, I want to hear what your answer is of what you do to kind of overcome. What is it that you say to yourself? Do you have like a key set of words you say?
I think,
I'll tell you what mine is in a second here.
Okay. Yeah. I think for me, I'm a very logically based person, and a lot of logically based people sometimes can I've noticed can talk down on emotional thinkers. And a lot of logically based people have trouble in sales in the beginning because sales is an emotional game for most people. Selling is an emotional thing.
Yeah.
But for me, because I'm logically based, I take a step back and I get over my ego and I say, this is an emotion. Emotion is strong. I'm not immune to it just because I might be a logically based thinker for the most part. And right now, I am having some emotion-based thinking. And why is this emotion happening? And I actually try to logically figure out what's happening. And I say, I say, all right, the emotion is what you're feeling right now because of how you're thinking. But the logic is this is how we overcome it, whether it's I'm getting stuck on my phone. I'm not a perfect human. I get sucked into my phone. Sometimes I hate it, and I'm like, throw the thing across the room or, put it on the bed so I don't get another crack in the screen. And then also understand like, okay, do the tasks and just keep on going, because if you're fishing, my analogy too is if I'm fishing, I'm not going to catch a fish every time. Right. I can't expect that. But if I just keep throwing the reel out, eventually it'll happen.
That kind of reminds me, because my daughters, I have them watch Bert and Ernie, and I don't know if you guys have seen the Bert and Ernie where they're fishing, right? And you know how Ernie's always messing with Bert, right? So Bert's got the fishing rod out there, and he's just trying to pull up fish, and there's no fish. And so Ernie's kind of just doing his own thing, and Bert asks him, "Hey, you gonna go fishing? Are you gonna catch a fish?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." He's like, "Okay, here's the pole." He's like, "Well, I don't need the pole." And so he's like, "What? You don't need the pole?" He's like, "Yeah, I call the fish." And he's like, "You call the fish?" He's like, "Yeah." And then so he gets out there and he goes, "Hey, fishy, 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 fishy." And then the fish jumps into the boat. And then Bert's like, "What the heck?" Right? And then Bert tries it, and of course he can't do it, which is the whole comedy skit behind it, right?
Right.
But it's, in a way, it was kind of teaching the kids, like, you're calling out to the universe what you want. You just have to believe in it. Bert did it, but he didn't believe he could do it, so it didn't happen for him, right? So it's like a self-belief thing. And I never really caught on to it until like after we've watched it so many times. I was like, oh shoot, they're really teaching us that kids that how important self-belief is, right? But let me go through some of these that people wrote in here. So there's different ways to handle it, right? Analytically, like you did. Michael says, he says to himself, "I'm capable of succeeding, and one day I'll look back at these days that I struggle and appreciate where it got me," right? Let's see here. Nick says to himself, "Hey, this is what hard feels like, and this is why most people can't do it, but you can," right? That's a great one too. Another Michael says, "This is all part of the process." Usman says, "You have done this before, stop overthinking." That's a big one. A lot of it's overthinking. Brittany says, "I have to remind myself that I can do this, and it's all in my head. I tell myself, why am I doing this? And let that carry me." That's huge, right? Saul, man, awesome. I think everybody should have this as an accountability partner. It's much easier to do any type of thing, especially when you're running your own business, is to have a partner that holds you accountable and you hold them accountable, right? And I'll say this too. Always, if you're having trouble, call your upline. They've been through it already, so they're more likely going to give you the advice and the things that you need, the tools to overcome that challenge. And then for me, you guys, I'm just straight up with myself. I tell myself, stop being a bitch, pull up your pants, stop crying, get back out there. It's that simple. But I'm tough on myself, like, because to me, I'm looking at it like, what are you crying for? Nobody's going to come save you. Get out there, go do it. You know you got it, right? So that's how I answer it. I know Deborah was waiting to hear what I was going to say.
Michael just said, the only thing in your way is your own self-doubt.
Absolutely.
Before I entered this industry, I would have read that as like some corny, like I said, the running tagline. I would have been like, okay, like, did you get that out of a fortune cookie? But it's now that I've experienced this, and I've experienced, other triumphs in like sports or whatever, but like with business and with earning income and making money, it's like it's very, very true. A lot of great things people are saying in here, and the power of just it's kind of like, okay, when I was in college, I was in a fraternity, and I'd be at a lot of these parties, and I didn't know how to talk to girls. I still don't. I'm figuring it out. But there would be some guys that would just like talk to girls, and I'm like, there's no way that girl will like fall for that guy. and it would happen. And it's because guys were just confident, and they had this confidence, and they were not doubting themselves the way I was doubting it.
Yeah.
It's like and like I said earlier, like I am still a very logical thinker, and sometimes people fall on the excuse of being a realist. And being a realist can be a good thing, but many times I've found out it's something that can hold people back, because it's like, oh yeah, well, $30,000 in 30 days. I mean, got to be a realist here. Like it's a silly thing in so many ways. So I do think there's so much more power in your mental belief in your belief in yourself, just your mental strength. And it can take you so much further almost than your actual ability. So yeah,
it's funny you say that too, because somebody said, and I don't remember who said the quote, but they said, basically, adulthood is where dreams come to die, right? And so people celebrate being a realist, right? But why not celebrate being a dreamer and going after and achieving what that goal was for you, instead of just settling? I think that's huge. I wanted to point something out that my good friend Anthony Ambecker here said, and I think this is super important, especially for people new in the business. Facts are your friends. Track your numbers, and it will help remove the emotional roller coaster out of this business. 100% right. And I think that's something that's super important for everybody to know. This is your life insurance is an emotional sell, right? And sometimes we get caught up in the emotion ourselves, and we stop looking at what it is that got us here and how well we have been doing, right? It's good to celebrate your wins. You got to pat yourself on your back, and you can't beat yourself up too much when you're having your lows, right? You got to have a plan of attack of how you're going to get out of it. And the best way to do that is having an accountability partner, knowing your facts like Anthony's talking about, and talking to your upline. You'll be fine, right?
When I was kind of first starting, and I was having lows, not from necessarily the mental part, but what I thought may have been the mental part. Somebody's told me, they said, I remember it was like a light that just hit me of reality and realization. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing too good. And they just said, well, how many appointments have you had this week? Yeah. And I said, 10. And they said, you need more at bats. You need more appointments. Yeah. And I was like, you're right. And you should check how many appointments you're doing. And when I went to the Vegas conference back in October, they had all the Hall of Fame producers up there. They're like, how many appointments are you doing? Most of them were doing 30 to 40 a week. 30, 40. I was like, an hour an appointment, 30 to 40 hours a week. Like, that seems real. That seems doable. And then when I realized I'm not doing that, it can seem like it, but like Anthony said, if you're not tracking it, what can be very different from what actually is. Yeah. And all my best weeks, right? And I've had some really, really good weeks. I've never had less than, 13 appointments, right? 12 to 13 every day, right? And that's how you're going to get the big numbers, right? You also got to spend the money on the leads, right? A lot of people are like, how do you get there? Well, you got to spend money to make money. Scared money never makes money. And I know everybody's heard that saying, but it is so true, right? It is one of the truest things. And it's scary. It is scary to bet on yourself. It is scary to put that kind of money out there, right? My boy Garen, who came on here, he's writing, an average of, 60 to 70 a month, but he's spending $6 to $8 grand a week in leads. And so for a lot of people, they're like, that's absurd, right? But it's not if you're seeing the results coming in, and he's putting himself at more at bats, like you're talking about, right? It's a volume play. So the more at bats you have, the more chances you have. And then of making a sale. And on top of that, even the sales that you don't make are so important too, because you're learning from that on what you did wrong and what you can say next, right? Yeah. How do I get better? Listen to yourself. Make sure you're recording it and ask yourself, would I buy from me? Yeah, that's a good point too, of taking those sales that are bad and don't letting them go to waste. No, why? Why would you? Yeah, you're paying for it, right? You're paying to learn, so learn. Take that opportunity to learn it, right? But yeah, man. So let's say, kind of getting closer to wrapping this up, right? You talked about, with me earlier in the week, how you had these really good
months and these low months. And then we talked about how, you know, if you averaged it all out from the beginning to the end, you're probably averaging 10 to 12 grand a month, right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is in your first year, right?
Right. And
right.
I just passed a year, but that was within the year. Yeah.
And people don't realize like 10 grand is pretty good money, right?
Yeah.
What are you on pace to making for the year? And
so for me right now, I'm on pace probably to do about 150,000, and 150,000 in AP, which, you know, roughly translates to about that, you know, in the commissions.
Right.
And there's a lot of people on here that they're younger or even older, and they want to hustle and grind.
Yeah.
And I respect that. I am fine right now at like where I'm at.
You're making 150 being lazy is what you're saying. You're not putting in the full amount of time,
I wouldn't
right?
say too lazy.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. But what I'm saying is you're not doing the go hard, right?
Well. No,
yeah.
I'm doing that, and like I said this kind of earlier. Like I got into insurance, and I realized the ability to make money was there, but I also didn't really realize the lifestyle. So even I might not be a $400,000 a year producer, but I'm able to take some time off. I live in Southern California. I feel incredibly blessed to live here. It is more expensive here, but I'm only going to be here for about another year because I don't want to buy a house. We don't want to buy a house here. And so the next year, I don't plan on doing like 7-day weeks, 6-day weeks. And that's my pace. That's for me, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to enjoy my time here. Now, when I move, I might then get kicked into gear and then start doing things because I'll be in a whole different area and I probably won't have a social life, right. Which is fine. And that's okay. But like, yeah, I mean, the amount of money I'm on pace to make this year will be more than I've probably made any like 2 or maybe 3 years before I got into insurance. So like, and I had a couple of slow months, and not only were this month, so I've had a couple of slow months this year, but not because of the whole mental thing we were even talking about. It was just because time that was taken off to go do things.
Right.
I went to a March Madness game with my college, which we lost, and that was terrible. But I'm really glad I went, and like I had that opportunity. And
you took a week off, right? And went to Salt Lake.
Yeah, I went to see Samir and all them, and then I went to Hawaii in April, which I've never been. And I try to be, and I want to caution with this too, like you said earlier. I am very cautious about how I spend my money because I understand that I'm in a business where things can go up and go down. But the point is like my time is where I make up for things. So I want to be off at the end of the day. I work a lot of East Coast leads / Central Time Zone leads. So I want to be off at the end of the day at around 5 or 6 p.m. Because that's what I want. I want my evenings. And so, that's my lifestyle that I can have where I can work maybe the similar typical 8 to 5, 9 to 6, or 9 to 5, somewhere in that range, and still be doing this. And I still have to work hard. Don't get me wrong. It still is hard work. And I still have the mental stuff that comes around every now and then.
Yeah.
I think what the best thing for me is when I learned, and I just recently learned this, people who even do like big numbers still have ups and downs, and knowing that it's not just unique to me. When I knew I wasn't alone in that boat, that really helped. That really helped me pick up my game and say, oh, everybody goes through this. It's just a matter, and people are still successful regardless. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. And if I want to pick things up and become a Hall of Fame producer, then I will. But right now I'm doing okay. I'm chilling. I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying boogie boarding at the beach and enjoying my SoCal weather.
Right? Yeah, you're doing that Southern Cal thing. I get it.
That's what I want to do. And if I know like, hey, in the future I want to do like, if I want to do like a vacation in 3 or 4 months from now, I know I can work for that. Versus like if I'm at a 9 to 5 where I'm either salaried or hourly.
Right.
What more
you're
is
on
my
their
health
time.
gonna do?
Yeah.
So, and then like I had a friend ask me a few months ago, he's like, hey, are you able to get July 4th off? I was like, let me ask my boss. Yes. Maybe, there's people on here like,
it's crazy because you know, you your own boss. I have to run it upstairs to my wife, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely have.
I'm still not my own boss yet.
I definitely have my girlfriend to consider as well.
Oh,
But the thing is just, and some people would say Fourth of July is a great time to work. That's when I get the most sales, and statistically, and that's fine. But I wanted it, if I wanted to
yeah,
take that day off, then I
you're gonna
could.
take it.
And
Yeah,
I could. Just the idea that I could was the free. Like, I can't imagine doing any other kind of career now that I've done this. The freedom is really the biggest part. And before this, I worked in production, and there was a sense of freedom in production too, because you might be on a project for 6 weeks, so you kind
right.
of in your head was like, well, when these 6 weeks end, I can like not work
Do
for a
what I
while
want.
unless.
Yeah,
But this is even more than that. Like,
yeah, because you're still doing 6 weeks no matter what.
yeah, right. You're still doing 6 weeks, and then usually in production, the joke is if you want to get work in production, because it's a gig industry, if you want to get work, book a vacation, and then that's when people will be like, "Hey, are you
Yeah,
free?"
I need you. Yeah,
So, and like if you don't take the work, then it like goes. So it was almost like a false sense of freedom, but the fact
yeah,
that it was there felt good. And
yeah.
and here it's like, and this isn't necessarily healthy. You should definitely be disciplined about when you're working and when you're not working, and making sure it's planned. Like waking up and being like, I'm going to take today off, kind of because you just want to, probably is not the best thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're beginning. Maybe if you're like really later on and you've got things cooking in the pipeline, whatever, sure. Depends. But if like you're like, hey, you know what, in a couple weeks I'm going to take the time off, and learning how to make that time off a possibility is something
Yeah.
you can do. Whereas I don't have to like hope that a boss approves my time card or
Right.
whatever. So
Right.
that's the freedom. So that's probably the best part of the
So what do
industry,
you,
but it could also be your Achilles heel.
so what do you think, like, now that I think you've been a year, right? What do
A
you
little
think is
here.
what's the biggest three things you've learned
Ooh.
about yourself from this business?
I think the first thing that sticks out is what we were talking earlier, that I can make money and not be so guilty about it. Feel bad about it. Like I can do that.
Yeah.
I just have to keep doing it. About myself, I've also learned I am not as disciplined as I used to be, and that is something that I needed to work on, because I used to be a lot more disciplined, but then becoming an adult, I have the ability and choices to not. I have the, when you're over 18, you're like, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
But that's not going to get you anywhere. So,
Yeah.
so that's huge. And then, so yeah, number one, number two, and then I would say the third biggest thing is kind of tagging on to number two, realizing what those distractions were in my life and how distracted I get, and having to face that reality. There's a video game I really like to play, right? And I realized how much that was like holding me back on a weekend of just like getting some extra work in, of like learning, whether it's learning advanced products or updating my spreadsheets that
Right.
track my business, like learning that and kind of facing that music a little bit. It's not easy. It's silly just with just a video game, but you find other things too. You're like, if you have to make decisions, and what your time is going to be spent on and what it's not going to be spent on. And if I decide to play a video game for an hour, which I'm not a big video gamer, it's just one video game I like to play, but still,
Right.
I play that one video game for an hour. It's an hour of time lost, and I'm going to feel guilty about it probably later. So it's so yeah, those would probably be the three biggest things I've learned about myself in this industry.
And then name one reason why you're glad that you got into it. Like, what's the one big reason why you got into it?
Well, obviously for other people, I do have a lot of conviction about life insurance, and getting people covered is important, and getting people peace of mind. So I'm gonna answer two things. One is because I'm helping other people and I'm getting them covered, and I'm able to find them coverage, and they have peace of mind. And then on my end of things, as a career, it's the freedom, the possibilities of freedom. Obviously making income, a great big income is great, but knowing that I value my time with, my girlfriend and people I love. And, if you have family members let's say you have a family member who might fall ill, you can know that you can spend that time with them and handle that. because that certainly is something that can happen to all of us.
For sure. Should we let them get away with a two for one? You guys throw a 2 in the chat if you think we should let them get away with it.
Oh, so I have to pick one?
Yeah. Sean said 1. Man, you got a lot of haters on you, bro.
I'll stick with the first one.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
that's
hey,
the
man.
first one I said.
Appreciate you so much for hopping on, man. And it's always a great conversation with you. Again, man, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.